Now that we have created our student table, it's time to insert some data into that table. We will insert the data using the insert keyword to create what we call the insert query. Now we need to identify the table in which we are inserting data, obviously, and we need to specify the data in the values clause. As you will see, we will have the insert query consisting of two clauses, the insert clause and the values clause. Now, the rows can be added one at a time, and you can have multiple queries in a script separated by a semicolon, or in some setups, you can also separate your values clauses by commas, and you can just keep inserting values in there. Now, providing the column name is optional. Now, this is kind of holding almost all the time, but there are some cases where this is not going to hold. So if the column names are not provided, you need to specify value for each column. Let me show you what I mean. So suppose that we have a table, and this is my table having 4 columns. Let me say C1, C2, C3, and C4. Now, if I want to insert values in all columns, I don't have to specify the column names. I can just say insert into, let me call this T1. It's going to be insert into T1 and then values, and then I will specify the values in here. Now, if I want to skip this column, for example, if I want to have null in here, I will have to specify the columns that I need to insert in. So I'll have to specify column 1, and then column 2, and then, I mean, not column 2, I'm going to skip column 2, so it's going to be column 3, and then column 4, and then I will say values, and value 1, value 2, value 3. Now this is going to attach the first value to the first column I specify, the second value to the second column I specify, and the third value to the third column that I specify. So the order of the columns in here needs to match the order of the values in the values clause to guarantee that this will work, first of all, because if you have different data types, this is not going to work. And if you have the same data types, you want some data consistency in your inserted data. Now, an insert command is going to look something like this. Without a column list, if you don't want to specify a column list, insert into, let's suppose that I have customers table, values, and then those are the values right away. And note that you need to give data for all columns in this case. You cannot skip any columns, otherwise you will get an error that's saying the column count doesn't match with what you have in here. Now let's do some examples on the table that we just created. Now this is the table that I have, which is the student table that we just created together. And we have student ID, full name, GPA, and date of birth. Let's try to insert some data. So insert into STU, and then I will not specify the columns right now. Values, and the first value is student ID 1101, and then full name. Full name is most popular person, John Doe. And then the GPA is, let's say, 3.09. And then date of birth is going to be, let's have any date of birth, so 1998, something like 0923. And then let me just have a select here, because right now I don't need to describe, I need to select to see if the data got inserted. Select star from STU. Again, this is not necessary, I'm just including it in here to show you what I have right away. let me just say STU, and let me run this. I was highlighting this, and when I run it with highlighted, it's going to run this query, so it skipped this. Now I don't need to highlight anything, I need it without any highlight, so it's going to run both queries. Now this is inserting a piece of data. Let me try to insert the exact same piece of data. Let's see what's gonna happen. Now recall that this is a primary key, and the rule for the primary key is I cannot have duplication. So if I run this, see what happens. I got an error, and the error is saying duplicate entry 11014 key primary, and this is the primary key preventing you from having the same key. Now if I change the key and I keep the same values, it doesn't care about these because this is the key. And if I run it, the key is different. Now recall that we had auto increment for the column right here, which is the ID. We had auto increment. Now we are not utilizing the auto increment. How can I utilize that? I need to skip inserting something into that column. But if I do this, and if I try to run it, it says column count doesn't match value count at row 1. So this means you're providing values, but the count of the values you're providing to me does not match what I have. Now in this case, you have to specify the columns here in which you want to insert. So I want to skip student ID, but I want to insert values into the other columns. So how do I do this? Again, what you need to do is you need to specify all the column names in your insert query to be able to insert those pieces of data. Now, right here after your table name, you will specify the column names that you need to insert pieces of data in. So I want to insert John Doe into the column called full name, and I want to insert the GPA, which is 3.09, into the column called GPA, and I want to insert the birth date, which is what I have here, September 23rd, 98, into the column called DOB. Now for the first column, which is the ID, I don't care. So if you run this, now I got 1103. Can run it, 1104. Now I'm not changing the name, but I'm just showing you that this changed. I can change the name, John Doe 2. Now I have this. Now you can do this as well. And I'll say some student with some GPA, so 2.99, and then some birth date, 05, and then 10. And if I do this, I got both students inserted at once because I'm separating the values by a comma. Keep in mind that this format has to match this format. Now again, if I want to skip the GPA, I need to skip the GPA here. Let me just take this out. But again, you need to take out this GPA column, and you need to insert it like this, and the GPA right now is null because I didn't insert anything for the GPA. Now I think we had the first name as a required attribute, so let's see. I'm not sure, but let's check. Yep, we had it as required attribute, so it's not going to allow you to insert anything, because if you recall, if you describe STU, full name doesn't allow nulls. So if you try to insert anything without that, it's going to prevent you from inserting that record. So let's go back and do something. Now, if I override this and I say, okay, 2000, insert it, and I got the 2000. Now, if I take all of these and go back and use the auto increment, it's going to start counting from the which one? Let's see. Again, we said it's going to count from the last one. So full name, and then GPA, and then DOB. Now if you do this, see, it checks the last one, start incrementing from that last one. Again, you can change you can change, you can insert manually and then change the count from there. And this is how you insert values into a table. Again, if you want to skip some columns, skipping some columns, either you want to have them as null or you want to have auto increment, you will have to specify the columns in which you are inserting the data into. If you don't want to skip any columns, you don't want to specify the column names, you will have to specify data for every single column, and they will have to be in the same order of the table. And finally, we said you can separate this by a comma here and have another piece of data instead of going and writing the insert query again. Now, there is a way to insert some data into a table from another table, but in that way you have to have the same structure of that table. What do I mean by this? Recall the cooking books table that we already created. So the cooking books table has the same data as, or the same structure as the books table. So select star from cooking books. I know half of it is uppercase, half is lowercase, but it's gonna work. So we have only those two books in the cooking books. Now, let's do something funny. Select star from books, where category is equal to children. So I have those books in here. See what we can do. Insert into cooking books. And I keep forgetting the O right here. So insert into cooking books whatever I get from that thing. And I run it. Now, select star from cooking books. I have 4 books. What did I just do? So what I just did is I inserted some data by copying it from another table. We have seen that you can create a table based on a select query. Again, you can insert data based on a select query as well. But keep in mind that the data you're inserting to and the data you're getting have the same structure. And this is another way to insert some data into a table.